So when everyone registered today, over the last few weeks, we asked you for some questions. On the basis of those questions, we tried to incorporate some of the answers into the presentations that you've already seen. So hopefully some of those questions may have been answered already. But I've picked out a couple. So we're going to go to the floor. We're going to go freestyle and old school without the use of any kind of digital platforms. We're going to live on the edge a little bit and open it up to the audience. But I've got a few questions that were submitted that possibly weren't covered off in the presentation. So I will get the ball rolling while you're having a little bit of a think. So, broad question, how can the regions of Victoria work with Tourism Australia? Maybe John or anyone who would like to take that?
Oh, I'm happy to start with that. I think for us it's a bit like pyramid selling. We have a very close relationship with the STOs and in particular here in Victoria with Visit Victoria. So I think the first step is working and engaging with your STO, and in this case Visit Victoria. Then, as Kristy said in her presentation, we have a lot of collateral that we've tried to really make it easy, digestible and practical for the industry into how to use our websites, how to engage with us on social media and through the various trade forums we run, not only here, such as ATE, but also around the world. And then I think, through Kristy, and look, can I say out of the industry team, you've got the best one. Dom, what Kristy didn't mention was that Dom looks after Queensland. Dom is also a New Zealander, and he's vegan, and I have nothing against vegans or vegetarians, but when you go to a pub in Longreach with Dom, it's pretty hard for him to get a meal sometimes. So, in Kristy, you've got a Western Bulldogs fan. So,
no, Fitzroy.
Or Fitzroy, sorry. Brisbane Lions, even better. But I think, working through our industry team as well, they can help you with how to engage with us and keep us informed of the good things and also the bad things. We often find that, as I said before, for us, it's better for us to know what's going on in the industry rather than just hearing good news all the time.
Good. Can't believe you got Footscray and Fitzroy mixed up. Thought you were a sports fan.
Sorry, boss.
How's TA working to attract more visitors to Melbourne and Victoria? Broad question again. Anyone?
Again, through our campaigns, Melbourne and Victoria are cornerstone to every piece of creative we do off every campaign that we've run. As we're now trying to do, as I said before, we're trying to extend that. So things like Undiscover, the creative that you saw from Paraniti Chopra twice, has different parts of Victoria in that. Through our various campaign platforms, we're doing that. Through our IMHP program, we work again with Visit Victoria on bringing media into the region, and then also looking through the business events program, which Penny can talk about, but also major events. We're starting to work more closely with Visit Vic on how do we leverage the great event calendar you have here, but also how do we bring certain events to Victoria. So, for example, World's 50 Best Restaurant was a great example of that. So we do it through multi-level. And then on the investment and aviation attraction side, we work very closely with Melbourne Airport, Lyle Stranby, and Visit Victoria on new services into Melbourne. And on the investment side, we showcase not only Melbourne, but also parts of regional Victoria to potential investors around the world.
Cool. Okay, maybe one more before we open it up to the floor. Nicki, thanks for joining us. When are the key booking times for international markets travelling to Victoria, and when are you targeting them?
I guess the short answer to when is the key time is 365 days of the year, simply because that's the time that there are things happening in Melbourne and Victoria. In terms of targeting international markets, it comes down to which market, booking windows. Some markets that are closer to Victoria, such as Singapore, Malaysia, for example, might book 3 or 4 months out. Longer haul markets such as the UK and the US will book 12 months out. So we keep a very close eye on the particular behaviour of those markets that we're targeting. And Pete spoke this morning about the priority markets, which continue to be China, India, Malaysia, etc., and monitoring the booking behaviour and the audience behaviour in terms of when they're looking to book. When an awareness message comes through from Tourism Australia, for example, when does it make sense for us then to follow with an active consideration or a conversion message, knowing that they are looking at booking 6 months out or whatever it is? But it does differ clearly market by market, but as I said, every day there's something on here, so it could be any time.
Great. Okay, now I think we've got a couple of microphones wandering around on the floor. Might I just remind you that our key remit is international tourism and markets, so if we could possibly keep the questions to anything related to that, that would be great. Down the front here. Is the microphone coming? If you wouldn't mind just standing up and saying where you're from as well.
Hi everybody, Fiona from Hidden Secrets Tours. Congratulations for having a lot of events in Perth for Tourism Australia. And this is both to Vicky and to the team. I'm unfortunately not going to ATE, and it is fair to say that they have to travel a long way. Both Dreamtime and also Corroboree are in Perth this year. When are we going to have another one back here in Victoria?
Well, look, let me answer that in 2 parts. Why are we going to Victoria Perth in 2019? Very simply, Western Australia needs help. If you've seen the latest IVS figures and arrivals figures, it is a state that's not doing so well. Unlike here, which continues to go exceptionally well. And we made the strategic call at the beginning of last year that with these events that we will go into parts of the country that we think need some assistance. And Perth has a problem at the moment in that it has an amazing new suite of hotel rooms, there's a brand new airport, great stadia, but it has this perception which has been proving difficult to shift and will take some time on it being expensive, because when the resources boom is going in Western Australia, it's very hard to get a room for a leisure traveller. So we took the call, and I led that decision to help them out, because I guess my remit is to get the country moving, and there's advantages for the rest of the country if all states and territories are doing well. Victoria has had a fair share of trade events. We had ATE, a very successful ATE here in 2017. 15, sorry, okay. We, as Penny said, we had the China Showcase. We've got the Virtuoso Symposium coming here later this year, World's 50 Best in 2017. So we have bought our fair share of stuff into this market. But we are, with events like Dreamtime Corroboree, we are going to increasingly target those parts of the country that we think need some assistance or pump priming ahead of time. And that's not to say you're a victim of your own success, but we took Dreamtime to Brisbane because in 2022 they've got exactly the same scenario that's coming down the pipeline as what has gone through Western Australia. So that's the reasoning behind it. We as I say, we think Melbourne is one of the jewels in the crown, Victoria is one of the jewels in the crown, and we'll continue to focus on it. But just this year we needed to give our friends in the West a bit of a push.
Any other questions? Where's David with the mic? There he is. In the middle.
Thanks a lot for the presentation. So I'm Hugh from the Caravan Industry of Australia. I just wanted to ask what sort of the plan for Tourism Australia is in terms of regional dispersal. You know, you see a lot of how much our regions are advertised on that, but over the last 10 years, you know, now it's only 1 in 5 nights by international visitors are spent outside of capital cities in the Gold Coast. Lowest proportion in more than a decade. So just wanted to see what a plan was around that and how you're addressing that.
Yeah, sure. So look, the creative is one part of it, but I guess what also sits behind it is a lot of the work we do with the trade, particularly through the Aussie Specialist Program, but also with our engagement offshore. And also related to that is around investment attraction. You know, the focus on investment attraction right now, as I said before, is not necessarily just on hotel rooms in CBD locations. It's now about experiences and also accommodation in regional parts of Australia, because you've got to give people reasons to go there, and that has been part of the research that's come back from particularly some of these markets out of Asia, is that they don't necessarily have that as prominently as where else other parts of the country. So we're addressing it through that, and as said before, and also with Trade for Mills into Australia and campaigns like Undiscover, is about putting different parts of the country on display.
Time for a couple more questions, maybe at the back.
Just to add to that comment, while we're waiting for the mic to arrive at the next, we love the Undiscover campaign because it absolutely gives us such great creative territory to go right in with all the messages that we can now talk about that are not the obvious ones. So it gives Victoria especially a great opportunity to talk about all the things that people don't know so well as the icons that have been so well established and well promoted. So it's a great launch pad for us to really leverage and work hard with the Victorian message specifically in the markets where TA is promoting that.
The other thing just to add to that is the Signature Experiences programs are a really key part of that as well. If you look at, you can go on tourism.australia.com and you can download the collateral for that program. The vast majority of that program is actually in regional parts of the country. So again, promoting that program as well has been a key part of that. And look, we know we've still got work to do on that. I'm not sitting here saying, look, 5% growth's great, pat everyone on the back, let's go home, because we do realise that we do have a job to do there. So we do take it very seriously, but we are addressing that as best we can through that. And we're also taking our own teams into regional parts of the country as well to show them what's actually going on more regularly than we have done so in the past.
Peter.
Peter McMahon, Canberra Backpackers Mafra. The working holiday visa has had a lot of bad publicity lately, or the last few years. And now politicians and unions pushing forward to close it down. And yet a lot of these politicians and union people who've got their own kids working overseas on it, we used to have so many, I don't know if they still work on this, do they still have so many Australian kids, the numbers go out and ones come back in? Because more and more, Canada, South Africa probably becoming our major competitors.
Yeah, they have. I mean, the big competitors that for us on Working Holiday Makers, as I said, Canada's only got about 16,000 people. It's not a big program. It has a lot of great publicity, but it's more markets like the US, which has got a bigger program that has been stealing quite a lot of our share. And look, it's been a really hard slog, not just for us. We're the least of the worries on that front. We know for the industry, because we know how important it is for you. So, which is why we've done that extra research on how do we tell the story a bit differently. There has been bad publicity around the sector. We know that, but it hasn't come out as high in the research as what has happened with those functional parts that I spoke about around, what happens if I take a year off? Do I lose my opportunity to get ahead of my friend? Or, if I come into Australia, am I just going to be surrounded by more of our country people? And the other one is around parents not knowing what their kids are going to be doing when they get to the market. So you'll see in our next iteration of Creative that we try to address those specifically, because the market's really shifted even since the days of Best Jobs, which was so successful. It's a bit like the independent travellers we're seeing. They've become more discerning, but again, it's probably been one of the toughest sectors that I had to deal with in my time in the job, but we'll continue to do that.
Just on that as well as industry relations for the states that I mentioned, I'm also the youth sector specialist at Tourism Australia, having worked in youth tourism for far too long. So if anyone wants any further information on that, then please feel free to contact me. I've had my head buried in, visa stats and numbers for the last few months in the lead up to our next campaign, which the creative hasn't quite come out on that yet. But yeah, if anyone needs any more information or has any suggestions, then please feel free to get in contact with me as well. Another question?
Hi guys, my name is Ian Clark. I'm from the Melbourne Cable Park. My question's in relation to the federal government side of things. Everyone talks about how the tourism economy, the visitor economy will be the backbone of any future economy. Do you think we're doing enough at a federal government level, and I refer to things like the TDDI program that seems to have not pursued or continued? Do you think our politicians actually are spending the right amount of money? And if not, where do you think we're missing out on? Things like an ethics-style funding program to help start up businesses. You go to a bank, you can't get money for tourism, it's just a joke. We live in proof of that. But if I had a contract for military equipment, which is an export product, they'll throw money at me. There just seems to be a disconnect between sustaining industries that we say aren't the future or are the future but not as big. Yeah. Maybe I'm misreading it, maybe you see more, but I just don't hear anything from our federal politicians about the word tourism.
Look, you're asking me to comment on my owner, so... It's like when it's back at news, what do you think of Rupert Murdoch? I love him. Look, in my 5 years in the job, I can only talk from a Tourism Australia perspective. We're a well-funded business. We get taken seriously by not only our Minister, Simon Birmingham, or Steve Chobo before that, but also other arms of government. Look, one of the things I'd say to you in answer to your question, and I say this to all of you, is if you have some issues that you want to put forward, the Beyond 2020 strategic draft strategy is actually online at the moment that you can put commentary in. That's a good opportunity for you to raise some of those issues. On EFIC, if you give your contact details to Kristy, we can make some more introductions there or try and help you with that. They have provided assistance to some tourism businesses now. They're starting to, since their act has been changed, it's freed them up a little bit more to be able to be involved in that. So we would like to try and help you with that. But look, in terms of some of the policy settings, we've seen good developments in aviation. We've now got open skies with China, which has been a big driver of that aviation capacity. There's been good movement in visa reform. Would the industry like more? Yes, they're very vocal about that. But through your lobby groups like the TTF, through VTIC, through membership groups like ATEC, that's probably your forum to raise that, because I can only really comment from a marketing point of view. And as I say, we're a well-funded business. We've not lost funding over the time of the time that I've been here. In fact, we've been given increased amounts of money. If you ask any operator of a federally government-owned business, would they like more money? Of course, the answer is yes. But we don't sneeze at the fact that we have $150 million to spend. We raise another 70, so that's almost $250 million we spend annually. So, from our point of view, they're good. But I'm more than happy to help you with EFIC. And please, if you've got comments, go to for the Beyond 2020 strat plan, which Austrade is driving at the moment.
More questions?
Hi everybody, my name is Sherry. Compared to other people's question, my question is very basic because my business is just starting up, so some question confusing me, especially on the employment stuff. So, Chinese people still wanted to know more Australian scenery. So after they come over, they still a few groups together, like a couple families. So actually, we're going to provide a tour guide or a few tour guides for our guests. But based on the tour guide's shifts, especially the working time, like how many hours they can work, what's the limited they can do for the guest, that's quite confusing me. So I'm a little bit struggling with that. Does that make sense?
So you're asking what are the permissible number of hours a day that they can work in that job?
Yeah, that's right. But because for example, they can start quite early in the morning, like around 6 a.m. or 7 a.m. And then, for example, it will be a long day to make them travel, and they're gonna about 12 hours. But so it's a little bit.
I don't have the answer, but I certainly know that we have rules around industrial relations and what is over and above the right number of hours. There are probably people in the room who do exactly that kind of work. If any of my team want to offer an answer as well, by all means do.
Okay.
Sorry, it's not normal for someone in the audience to answer. The lady is free to contact the PTGAA. We are the Professional Tour Guide Association. We undertake the professional development and accreditation of guides. Feel free to contact us, and we're more than happy to help. Thank you.
Thank you. It isn't normal
Thanks
for the audience
so
to
much.
answer.
Thank you.
Thank you.
But we're a friendly bunch.
There's a
It's a
question
bit of-
down the front here, I think, David.
It's a bit of crowdfunding source for
Yes.
the answer.
Yeah, there's a microphone coming.
Hi, I'm Saxon from Rat and Dragon. We make promotional films for travel companies. And I saw the word authenticity mentioned pretty early on, actually. But I've noticed that a lot of the material that we've seen have featured really well-dressed, market-specific models. Can you tell us what... it looks great. It looks fantastic. But I'd like to know what Tourism Australia is doing specifically to put the real authentic moments that travellers have on the front foot and out there in different markets. And if you've seen anything that's cool that you could recommend us to have a look at. Thanks.
No, it's a really good point. I've actually slashed the wardrobe budget of all of our production. From here on in. No, look, the ads is everything's beautiful, everything. You know, we never have anything but a blue sky in Australia. We never have, we always have perfect shots as called CGI. But that's why we use social media. Social media is probably the most authentic channel I think you can get. And I have this sort of corny saying, which is, no one tells a story better about Australia than an Australian or someone who visits here or someone who lives here. And social media for us is that avenue and that channel. And if you go on our Instagram or our Facebook sites, if you go in China on our WeChat and Weibo platforms, you will see imagery that's not done by a production company. It doesn't take 3 days to shoot and then 5 days in post. It's actually done as it's happening. And some of the imagery that comes out of that is stuff that we have now started to use in some of our campaign materials offshore because it's so good. So for us, really, that's where social media is. But and that's where for us, that's our push on that authenticity point. I guess the other thing for us is also now is what that tells us, though. Sometimes you go to minister meetings and feedback forums, and you get asked the question, "Well, why haven't you got all Chinese people in your ads?" It's you've got a mixture of people And what our markets are telling us is that they know that can be sometimes staged. So they actually know, when they come to a market, they actually want to hang out with Australians or they want to just hang out with the locals. So that's why we're starting to change that. But if you go on our social media platforms, you'll see the stuff there that's sent in by industry or sent in by punters who are travelling that I always say it's great and I don't have to book depreciation against the asset in future years.
Can I add also Visit Vic's perspective on that very topic? Because it's my favourite topic at the moment to talk about. We're actually redesigning how we manage content as a means of communicating our messages to audiences wherever they are. So it's not just about creating content, but it's curating and co-creating. And as marketers, yes, we can produce some amazing material with budget and with time and with resources, but those three things are always going to be limited. And as marketers, we're no longer completely in control of our marketing message. We're simply not, particularly with a category like this, where it's exactly how people experience the brand, the product that will determine our success in the future. So we're very, very well aware that we need to be doing quite a different job in terms of how we create content and also how we distribute it. So we're doing quite a lot of work in that space at the moment to think about how we retool the limited resources that we have to create messaging content. And particularly, Pete said this earlier this morning, and it's one of his favourite sayings, Melbourne and Victoria is a city and state that you do. You don't just see it. It's also a city and state that you feel. And the experiences and the authenticity that comes from the people in this room that are delivering those experiences to our visitors come from you. They don't come from a can, you know, a beautifully produced $5 million TV commercial. Great question. We'll talk more later.
Actually, if you want to access some of our material, though, we have an image library that's open for the industry to use, and we say to you that to all of you as the industry that you don't need to go and employ production companies if you don't want to necessarily. You can use our image library, which servo operators have. And it's not great if you run a film company, but you asked a question, but. It is, in all seriousness, it is there. But to your point, you will see all of us start to move toward that user-generated and more authentic production values, or from punters shot on iPhones or, and mobile phones, because the quality's so good now, and the stuff you get, like some of the stuff we've been getting out of Western Australia with around Ningaloo Reef is just better than any ad agency could do. Much better. So I think it's the future. But we have an image library you can use, and have a look on our social media platforms and visit Vix as well.
Okay, so I think I was meant to bring my phone up here to keep track of time, and I didn't. So
it's 2:45.
It's 2:45. Okay, we've got time for some more questions down the front here. Yes.
Just a quick one, if I can, and I will make it brief. John, I think you're doing a great job.
Thanks.
And I think you don't get enough recognition.
I've got to do something about the wardrobe, so. No, thank you.
Tell me, is there much of a measurement between the service delivery gap and what you sell?
Jeez. We wrap it up. Thanks. Is there a measurement? Yeah, there is. I mean, look, I think the consumer and the customer now is more powerful than ever before through platforms like TripAdvisor, Expedia, these sites that they can rate product on, and they can do it instantaneously. And we more often than not now watch those platforms to see what experiences people have, and you can actually track on geographical areas around ratings across experiences, across accommodations. So yes, you can you can track that through those sites, and also from just listening to our social media platforms around what some people are saying or commenting on. If we put a particular post out, you can often see, based on the commentary you get back from people about, you can generally see a trend come through that. So that's really, I think, where I think the future is going on. Well, not the future, it's here. That's where it's going, because the customer is more powerful than ever before. And it's something that people may not necessarily like it, but it's here, and that's where I think you get the most accurate tracking on.
Any more questions maybe on this side of the room?
Hey, my name's Geordie from Expedia Group. I just wanted to know, in terms of targeting more international travellers to Australia, are you using OTAs, I guess, leveraging a partnership with OTAs more? For example, What If is a domestic brand, but then Expedia is very American based.
Yes.
So are you going to be, I guess, doing more to partner with OTAs?
OTAs are probably one of our biggest partners offshore. If you take the Dundee campaign, Expedia was our largest partner in the US, and actually had the biggest or the most successful growth numbers out of the campaign. They up in the order, I think, of 30-40% on certain categories. One category, I think, was 60-odd% up. So Expedia is a big part of the Visit the Set campaign. But it's not all just about Expedia, as we know. In India, we work with a company called Make My Trip, which is one of the biggest OTAs in that market. And in fact, during the Kappa Aviation Summit, we took a delegation of 22 people. We met the founders and had a tour of their office. C-Trip is a major partner of ours and they're major competitors. So yes, in answer to your question, OTAs are a big part of our partnership platform. And a really important way of getting to the independent traveller. But we also balance that with the traditional trade as well, which is still in many markets really, really important for us. So we, a lot like we do with our geographic spread, we take a bit of a balanced approach to it. But we do work with Expedia, your major competitors, and then obviously some of the leading specific OTAs in each of our key markets as well.
And I think that the amount of OTAs that attend ATE every year is always increasing as well from all around the world.
But, you know, you guys are just gobbling up everyone. It'll just be you and C-Trip soon. So, you know, it'll be like that.
Thanks.
Okay, there's one down the front here.
Yeah. Charles Davidson from Peninsula Hot Springs. I was really interested to see that Peter Bingaman was talking about the movement into wellness tourism, and that's a direction which Visit Vic is going back to. I mean, like it really identified it very early years ago, Visit Vic did, and but now it looks like there's a campaign coming up or something coming up. I'm interested to see what that looks like for Visit Vic, but also how it might be working for Tourism Australia and how you might work together to lift wellness tourism Australia-wide.
Yeah, so I missed that part of Pete's talk this morning, so I can't speak to the details that he might have shared with you. We're just kicking off our planning now for F9 1920.
I think it was 25 million.
Yeah, that sounds no. So as I said, we're just starting our planning. So we don't have anything specific. I can't talk to you about a specific campaign or where it would be. But what we are doing is looking at research and data to tell us what do people want to do and what is going to motivate people to travel. So the research that he did talk about, triggers, motivators, barriers and drivers, we've done a first tranche of that for domestic markets, and we're going to deepen that just to really identify, because as I said earlier, we have limited resources and budget. It will pay us better return on our investment to be marketing where the people are, where they have propensity to travel, i.e. China, India, and talking to them about the things that we know are of interest to them. So that's why wellness is back on the radar, because the research is telling us that it's what, you know, it's not even a growing trend, it's here and it's booming. And it's no longer niche, and you know, it affects everybody. So yes, it's certainly a big topic for us to be thinking about as we're planning ahead. T, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, look, one of the things we're contemplating, Charles, at the moment is whether or not, as part of that collectives group, we could look at a wellness collective. So it's actively being considered at the moment. That comes back to being able to get some scale within the collective that's export ready. So obviously, you know, Peninsula Hot Springs is more than export ready, but for us, it's about pinning together the other parts of that, what that may look at. And the other thing we're seeing, particularly in that premium travel space, we think that's where, you know, for us from an international perspective to start with, that's where we think another opportunity is going to come from. But ultimately, international visitors will follow their nose to where the locals are going. So if people from Sydney, people from, you know, other parts of Victoria are going down to Peninsula Hot Springs, then, you know, the international markets will start to naturally follow that, because they'll hear the chatter on social, they'll hear the stories coming through the travel trade about it, and that's where really it'll come from.
Yeah, thank you so much for all of your questions. I just wanted to finish up with a last couple of points. Our next big conference that we've got going on is Destination Australia on the 14th of March in Brisbane. It was here in Melbourne last year. It's a sellout every year, but there are still a few tickets left, so you haven't quite missed out on that one. If you wanted to jump on the website, you can get your tickets for that. Brisbane on the 14th of March. Also, just to remind everyone who's registered, you'll get your feedback form emailed to you this afternoon. That's really important that you fill that in. So if you could please be so kind to spend a minute or two leaving your thoughts on today and how it went, just so we can plan for next year and give you more of what you want and less of what you don't want. So thank you again to our panel.
Thank you.
Thank you for your attendance, and I think Felicia is just going to say a few words to finish up today.